Welcome back, young scholars. In this video, we are going to be investigating the mystery of the lost colony, Roanoke. I want to start with just some background about the lost colony of Roanoke. In 1587, a man named Sir Walter Raleigh financed the first permanent English settlement in the New World. Here you can see a picture of Sir Walter Raleigh, and you can tell just how wealthy he was based on the way he was dressed. And Raleigh had been given permission by the Queen Elizabeth I to settle any land near Virginia that was not occupied by Christians. In other words, land that was where there were Native Americans who were living who were not Christians. 100 men and 17 women set sail from England, headed to the New World. They landed on Roanoke Island off the North Carolina coast. Here we can see a modern-day map showing you the border of Virginia and North Carolina and the outer banks of North Carolina, the island of Roanoke, which is circled. Here you can see a map that was created by one of the Roanoke colonists at the time. The Roanoke colonists chose to start their colony on land that was not empty. A number of Native American tribes lived on the island and in the surrounding areas. Many of the Native American tribes were hostile to the colonists, fearing that the colonists were dangerous. In fact, only one tribe in the area was friendly to the new settlers. That group was the Croatoans, who wanted peace and understanding between themselves and these new English neighbors. The men and women quickly built shelters and planted crops. However, they arrived too late in the season to harvest successful crops. Running out of food, John White, the leader of the colony, decided to go back to England to get some supplies. And hours turned into days, which eventually turned into years. And due to wars in Europe, John White could not return to the Roanoke colony for 3 years. When he finally returned, White found the entire colony, including his daughter and granddaughter, their houses and belongings, had vanished without a trace. Before White had left for England, the colonists had been discussing leaving Roanoke. The island was small and did not have enough farmland to support a large community, and the waters surrounding the island were shallow, so that the large ships could not anchor there. It was agreed that if they were to move while White was gone, they would leave a message indicating their new location. Furthermore, if they had been in trouble when they left, they were to leave a Maltese cross, such as this one, above the message, which would indicate where the colonists were headed to. When White and his crew finally returned to Roanoke after 3 years, he found 2 mysterious carvings. The first was found on a tree with the letters C-R-O. The second was on a fence post, where they found the word Croatoan carved. It is the oldest unsolved mystery in American history. What happened to the colonists at Roanoke? Now, what I want you to do next is take a minute to hypothesize what might have happened to the Roanoke colonists. So this is just your first initial guess based upon the background information that I've presented to you about what the fate of those colonists might have been. Now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to present 4 very popular theories about what might have happened to the colonists at Roanoke. And for each of these theories, I want you to answer these 2 questions. First, what evidence supports or contradicts the theory? And then second, is the evidence persuasive? Does it convince you that what's presented in the theory was what actually happened to the colonists at Roanoke? So theory 1 was that the Roanoke colonists were killed by Indians. One explanation for the missing Roanoke colonists was that they were all killed by unfriendly Indians. Some believe that the colonists were killed on Roanoke by unfriendly Roanoke Indians. They point out that beginning with the first English expedition to Roanoke, the colonists had been increasingly fighting with nearby Indians. In 1585, Richard Grenville, the leader of the expedition, took a party of some 50 men in 4 boats to scout the surrounding area and to make contact with the native people. At one stop, Grenville noticed one of his silver cups had gone missing. Grenville believed the Indians had stolen it. According to a witness, Grenville and his men burnt and spoiled the tribe's corn and town, all the people being fled. Some believe that the Indians may have killed the Roanoke colonists as payback for the burning of their village. Some believe it is possible that the supposedly friendly Croatoan Indians killed the colonists. The colonists had also attacked the Croatoan tribe earlier, so the Croatoan were likely angry at the colonists. Perhaps the message Croatoan did not indicate where the colonists had moved to, but instead who was killing them. This might explain why the colonists were not able to finish the second carving, only writing CRO. Others believe it was the Powhatan Indians who killed the colonists. William Strachey, secretary of the Jamestown colony, wrote in 1608 about a rumor he had heard about the fate of the colonists. According to this story, some of the colonists fled northward and lived peacefully for 20 years with the Chesapeake Indians. Shortly before the Jamestown colonists arrived in Virginia, though, Chief Powhatan had miserably slaughtered the remaining Roanoke colonists and the Chesapeake Indians because they failed to pay him tribute. So what do you think? First of all, what is the evidence that supports this theory? And then is this evidence persuasive? Does it convince you? So theory 2 was that the Roanoke colonists joined the Indians. So a second popular theory about the lost colony of Roanoke is that the colonists left Roanoke and joined the Croatoan Indian tribe. Those who believe the colonists joined with the Croatoan Indians point to the two carvings left for white on the posts. Additionally, there was no Maltese cross in the carving, which would indicate the colonists were in any danger. Believers of this theory also point to reports of local Native Americans with white features. In 1607, an English colonist traveling in the area wrote, "We saw a savage boy, about the age of 10 years, which had a head of hair of perfect yellow and a reasonable white skin, which is a miracle amongst savages." Sightings such as this one suggest that intermarrying between the Roanoke colonists and the Indians had taken place. In the early 1700s, John Lawson, a surveyor and historian, met some Croatoan Indians. In his book, he wrote that the Indians had told him that several of their ancestors were white people and could talk as we do. And nearly 2 centuries later, historian Stephen Weeks in 1891 pointed out that many of the Croatoan Indians had the same names as the Roanoke colonists. He wrote, "The strongest evidence of all is the family names of the Croatoan Indians of today. John White, in his account of the settlement of 1587, has left us a list of the names of all the men, women, and children which safely arrived at Roanoke. These settlers were 117 in number and had 95 different last names. 200 years later, 41 of these last names were still being used by the descendants of the Croatoan Indians." So what do you think? Is this strong evidence? Does it convince you that the lost colony of Roanoke in fact joined with the Native American tribes? Theory 3 was that the Roanoke colonists were killed by the Spanish. During the time of the Roanoke colony's settlement, England and Spain were bitter rivals at war. The Spanish had long ago established a colony just down the coast in St. Augustine, Florida. Spain may have resented an intrusion by the English into what they felt was their territory in the New World. In 1588, the English destroyed the Spanish Armada. Spain may have sought revenge by killing the English colonists at Roanoke. The Spanish had a history of attacking the colonies in the New World. The Spanish had destroyed the French colony of Fort Charles in South Carolina and massacred the residents of Fort Caroline, a French colony in present-day Jacksonville, Florida. The Spanish in the West Indies were aware of the English colonists' presence. One Roanoke settler named Darby Glandy left the 1587 expedition once it set ashore in Puerto Rico to take on supplies. He later reported that he told Spanish officials the location of the Roanoke settlement. According to Spanish records, Spain sent a ship in 1588 to locate the colony of Roanoke. However, there is no evidence in the Spanish records that the Spanish ever found, let alone attacked, the colony at Roanoke. Moreover, if the Spanish had attacked the colonists, why would the colonists have carved the word Croatoan into the post? So what do you think? What's the evidence both for and against this theory that the Roanoke colonists were killed by the Spanish? And is that evidence persuasive? Theory 4 was that the Roanoke colonists drowned. Others claim that the colonists had died, but not at the hands of the Indians or the Spanish. They argued that the colonists drowned while trying to return to England in a small boat. Here we can see that small vessel drowning in the Atlantic Ocean. Historians Hugh Leffler and Albert Ray Newsom wrote in their book about the colony, one of the most likely theories is that the group, finally despairing of relief, sailed for England in a boat which had been left with them in 1587 and were lost in the Atlantic. The colonists had a small ship called a Pinnacle left for them to use. When John White returned to Roanoke about after 3 years, he never mentioned seeing the boat. Other historians argue that the colonists did not have a ship large enough to carry the whole group back to England. Therefore, some people at least would have to have remained on the Roanoke Island. Additionally, if the colonists were returning to England, why would they have carved the word Croatoan into the post? So what do you think? Is there support for this theory that the colonists drowned in the Atlantic Ocean? And if so, is the evidence supporting this theory persuasive? Does it convince you?
This is CNN Breaking News.
So just when you thought that this story was really confined to history and that there was no modern day implications, there was some big news in May of 2012. A new clue to the mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke was discovered, and it was written about in a number of newspaper and magazine articles.
I think we found ourselves a clue.
I think we have found ourselves a clue, Thelma. And here was the clue, and it was amazingly enough right under the nose of historians and archaeologists for the longest time. You can see here a map that was created by John White. It was a watercolor showing you the location of the Roanoke Island and the Outer Banks. And you probably didn't notice, but maybe you're noticing it now, there was a small patch that was affixed to the map that was covering one area. And for whatever reason, no one had bothered to look under this patch until someone pointed it out and said, well, it might be a good idea to check out what's under there. And so using some modern technology, they were able to determine what was under there without removing the patch. And it so happens to be a shape similar to a fort, which suggests maybe that the colonists were trying to either hide or cover up the location of this fort. And many people believe that the colonists at Roanoke likely traveled from Roanoke Island inland and may have reestablished a settlement in this area in North Carolina. And here's a map of Google Earth showing you the location of the Roanoke Island, the Outer Banks. And so you can probably guess where a lot of attention is being turned now. It was in this particular area of North Carolina in a place called Burney County. And if you travel to this area, interesting enough, there happens to be a golf course which was designed by Arnold Palmer. It's a very nice golf course, apparently. And this is where many archaeologists and historians are interested in excavating this area so that they can see if they can find any additional evidence or clues which may point to the fate of the lost colony of Roanoke. So stay tuned because we may even have more evidence soon about what ultimately may have caused the demise of this colony. So I leave you with this question. What happened to the colonists at Roanoke? Again, there's no single correct answer, but again, use your best judgment based upon the evidence that's been presented and decide which of the theories was most persuasive or convincing to you. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.